All right, guys. Let's see what's going on in the markets. And to be honest, there's not much. I made a video on Monday or Tuesday. I don't know. I said I said we're probably gonna have another capitulation in altcoins, probably Bitcoin as well. Mainly because the sentiment is just kind of like people are just like big pussies. Like everybody's like a big pussy. And we have the halving coming up in 7 months, and I just can't see Bitcoin just being bullish until the halving. I just feel like there's going to be another big old dump, and that's kind of what we've gotten in a way. Bitcoin dumped under 29,000, but now it's back above 29,000. A lot of the altcoins have dipped further. XRP back down to 66 cents. I wouldn't be surprised if XRP goes back down to 40 cents, to be honest with you. I just think that hype is over. Now, in the bull market, I think XRP might go up to $2 or $3, but we still have another year for that one. Cardano back under 30 cents. We're at 29 cents for Cardano. I noticed Litecoin's halving is come and gone, and now Litecoin's back down to $83. I think on Monday I said if Bitcoin dumps, Litecoin's going down to $75. So essentially everything I've called has pretty much happened. I expect this to be a volatile next few months. I've noticed that right now a lot of people are negative. I'm seeing a lot of YouTubers talking about Bitcoin going down to 15,000. Gareth Soloway has crawled back out from under his hole. Now he's talking about a $15,000 Bitcoin. Of course, 6 months ago he was talking about a $3,000 Bitcoin. I mean, if people can't see like you're being scammed by these Bitcoin predictors, they're all wrong. And it's just so funny. They're wrong, and then when we get bearish, they come back out, and then when we go bullish, they basically go away again. It's a big old scam, what's going on with these guys. But the big story is still Hex. I talked about it on Monday. Richard Hart, he was sued by the SEC, not just for having a security, but they're also accusing him of spending investor money on cars and diamonds, things like that. A lot of people have completely capitulated on Hex. They think it's over. I've been for the last couple of days listening to a lot of legal arguments about Hex. Martin Shkreli, the guy, the pharmaceutical guy, the kid who's like 28 years old, who created that pharmaceutical company, and he went to jail for selling securities or some sort of fraud with a hedge fund that he had. He thinks Richard Hart is 100% going to jail, and he thinks everything from Richard Hart's a big scam. Here's a little bit from him.
Is pretty cut and dry fraud, and my guess is he'll go to jail, and he'll probably go for a long time. And I don't wish that on anyone because I did it. But I think that in particular, the SEC is very, very nasty when money goes from a poor person who's uninformed to a person who makes a lot of money, and then that whatever they bought drops in value dramatically. You can sort of like try to create some machination in your head that, oh, well, maybe it's not a security. Oh, well, maybe it's not this or that. But if you actually read the fraud statute, it's like one sentence and it's like extremely vague for that reason, because our legislators a long time ago realized they couldn't enumerate every single type of fraud. So wire fraud is literally fraud over the wires, any kind of electronic communication. And Hart, bless his soul, what's his real name again? I'm not going to call him Richard Hart anymore.
Richard Schuller.
Richard Schuller, aka Richard Hart, I'm surprised he's not a criminal defendant yet. Usually there's a sort of a parallel process, but it doesn't always happen that way. But the point is, he's made a lot of statements over the web, over YouTube, over Twitter, prognosticating about the price of his security or his asset or his whatever. And, if that induced you to buy it, right, it doesn't matter if it's stock or a bond or a Beanie Baby. If his claims induced you to buy it, and then you got injured by that, by a false claim or an incomplete claim. I actually had a lot of issues in my case where it was omitting something.
Anyway, so the general consensus on Richard Hart is that he's probably going to be charged criminally and eventually go to jail. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. What's that going to do for the price of Hex? Well, it's probably not going to be great, but a lot of people have completely said, Hex is done, it's over, it's going to zero. Guys, you can't say whether Hex is a failure until we go into the next bull market. So if we're in 2025 and Litecoin's $800, Cardano's $10, Theta's $20, all your favorite altcoins have gone up 20x, and Hex is still where it is right now, then you can come out and say it's a failure. But right now, we're in the early phases of this whole Hex controversy. It's going to take years to litigate. it's going to absolutely hurt Hex's price in the bull market, but Hex could still 20, 30, 40x from here. It could also go to zero. You know, the one thing I don't like now, and I've always said it, you guys can watch my videos, maybe I'll even pull one up. The one thing I liked about Hex, it wasn't the project. It wasn't what the coin can do. It wasn't that it's a great crypto. It was that Richard Hart was going to be able to shill the fuck out of it. You know, one thing that got me into Hex even more was about 8 months ago, Richard Hart went on a media blitz. He went on the Fresh and Fit podcast, PBT. I thought he was going to be on Joe Rogan. I mean, he was on every podcast just shilling the crap out of Hex. And I'm saying to myself, if this guy's shilling Hex like this in the bull market, it's going to 100x. Now, I always knew in the back of my mind that if something happens to Richard Hart, he gets arrested, gets hit by a bus, gets sick, it's not going to be good for Hex. And that's why it's always dangerous to put a lot of money into a coin that's basically in the hands of one promoter. And that's what we kind of did with Hex. I didn't put a lot of money into Hex. I put a couple $100s into Hex. I think at the height, my Hex portfolio was like $600, and I think now it's down to like $200. I mean, I bought it low to begin with. I mean, it's such a small percent of my portfolio. If it goes to zero, it goes to zero. But I always knew Hex was a very risky play, and I always said that in all of my videos, and I always said don't go too don't go too hard on Hex, because if anything happens to Richard Hart, we all know he's kind of shady. He's using a fake name, but shady or not, like, I really thought during the bull market, which maybe he still will, he would be out giving interviews, pumping it. Now, we still have a situation where Richard Hart, he's going to be going through litigation with the SEC if he even decides to even respond to this, and that's going to take years. So we're pretty much looking at 2, 3, 4 years before anything comes out of Richard Hart as far as whether he's guilty or innocent. But the problem is, the negative is, if the DOJ, Department of Justice, decides to criminally charge Richard Hart, the price of Hex is basically going to go to it's going to drop another 80% from where it is right now. And that's the general consensus. Most people think that that's going to happen. So I'm not selling any of my Hex. I put like $300-400 in the Hex, if that. It's probably, I think it's worth that really right now. I'm not even down that much. But it's not even worth it. I'm not selling any of my coins until the bull market. And if Hex does a 10x from here, or a 20x from here, or it goes to zero, that's fine. I think even if Richard Hart goes to trial, there's going to be good days in the trial where Hex pumps. There's going to be bad days where it dumps. If you remember the XRP trial, every time the judge would fart, the price would go up. You know, I mean, we're in the early stages, and I think, yeah, if you put thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars into Hex, you got to take some out of there because this thing could go to zero. But if you're like me and or like most people, and you put a couple $100s into Hex, and you've watched it go from $300 to $1,000 to back down to $300 over the last year, I mean, just ride this thing out, guys, because you really don't want to get caught up in the short-term noise. Even though it looks bad, if Richard Hart was using investor money to buy those diamonds and those cars, he deserves to go to jail. And I never said Richard Hart was like a great guy or a saint. I just think he's a good promoter. And in crypto, you need a good promoter. If Charlie Lee was a better promoter for Litecoin would probably be a couple $1,000s last bull market, but he's not. Richard Hart is the guy you want promoting your coin, but unfortunately the SEC kind of put the brakes on that one. And just going back on Hex, here's a video I made 5 months ago about Hex, just talking about Hex and how it's doing well. And here's my warning 5 months ago, just letting people know, don't put too much money into it. The only thing with Hex is, Richard Hart, if something happens to Richard Hart, Hex can go to zero. If Richard Hart, he holds most of the coins. So if Richard Hart decides to sell all his coins, it could go to zero. It's a risky coin. It's not like buying Cardano. It's not like buying Theta. It's not like buying Bitcoin. It's a coin you make like 1% of your portfolio, 2% of your portfolio. I didn't even do that. I basically put like $500 into it. Now it's worth like $1,500 or $2,000 or something like that. But that could turn into $50,000 in a couple years. Like I said, risky project, but Richard Hart. Yeah, so that's me like 5 months ago. I've always been saying it's a risky project, but it's one of those possible 100x gems. And unfortunately, the SEC has basically put their foot on the neck of that project, and I don't think Hex is going to do crazy well in the bull market, but you never know. The news is ever changing. If they drop the charges on Richard Hart, if Richard Hart doesn't get charged criminally, if he ends up fighting this and makes an announcement that he's going to fight it, the price could go up. So I'm keeping my Hex for now. Okay, like I mentioned earlier, we saw the Litecoin halving come and go. Litecoin did pump. I mean, it pumped from like $50. It went up to like $120 or something like that, $110 a couple weeks ago, and now it's back down to $84. Folks, the problem is when Litecoin has its halving, when Bitcoin is still in a bear market and Bitcoin hasn't had its halving yet, none of these coins are going to do all that much until Bitcoin actually goes into a bull market, especially a big cap coin like Litecoin. So Litecoin back down to $83. I made a video on Monday or Tuesday. I said it's probably going to go back down to $75 or $65. Wouldn't be surprised. If Litecoin goes back down to $65, I'll probably pick up some more. I know a lot of people don't like Litecoin, but I still think Litecoin is going to be a really, really good gainer for the next bull market, especially when the supply has already been cut. They've already had their halving, and I think they're going to go into that bull market starting next year. But really, folks, right now we're in a situation where everything's kind of bearish. You know, all the YouTubers, you got Benjamin Cowan coming out saying everything's going to drop 50%. Crypto Rand talking about a bear market. It just looks like we're going to get that final capitulation, which, yeah, I mean, Benjamin Cowan said like altcoins could drop another 50%. And it is possible. I mean, you could see a lot of these altcoins drop another 50%, but it's so stupid to be like playing around trading these right now. Yeah, I mean, Cardano could drop down to, like I saw an article today, could Cardano drop down to 25 cents? It's been dropping down to 25 cents for the last year. It's like par for the course. Like if I woke up tomorrow and Cardano's 25 cents, I'd be like, yo, so what? I've seen 25-cent Cardano before. Cardano is not dropping down to 10 cents. It's not dropping down to 15 cents. It's just not going to happen. It's going to be in a range right now between 25 and 40 cents. You know, every crypto cycle, this is the boring phase, when we're like 7 or 8 months from the halving. People don't know what to do with themselves. They're like, oh my God, we know we're going bullish in 7 or 8 months, but for the next 7 or 8 months, it's going to be like, what are we going to do with ourselves? There's like hardly any news, nothing's going on, interest is low. Guys, I mean, I'm just accumulating. Now, I'm not accumulating anything right now because prices are pretty much the same as they've been. But if we get some big capitulation flash crash, which we haven't had in a while, let's be honest. We haven't had a good flash crash in a while. But if for some weird reason Cardano drops down to 20 cents, which I don't think it's going to do, I'll buy more Cardano. If Litecoin drops down to $65, I'll buy more. This is just opportunity to buy because we know this time next year we're going to be completely bullish. Completely bullish. And I found this article, Bitcoin miners need Bitcoin price to be up $98,000 by the halving. Now this happens every halving. Like they say what price Bitcoin needs to be, and if not, the miners are going to be really upset. And I don't think we're going to be at $98,000 Bitcoin by the halving in 2024 by April, but I think eventually, I think by mid-2024, towards the end of 2024, that's when you're going to see Bitcoin at $98,000. Remember, the Bitcoin miners always get the price they want. The whales always get the price they want on Bitcoin, and that's their goal. So you know the goal for the miners, the goal for the whales is about $100,000 Bitcoin, and there's no question we're going to get that. All right, so that's pretty much it. You know, there's not too much going on. Like I said, we have that 7 or 8 months till the halving, and I think we're going to see a lot of volatility. Bitcoin dominance is up a little bit, and Bitcoin hanging out at 29,238. So I think you have to step back and you have to look at the grand scheme of things. Where just 6 months ago, we were at $15,000 Bitcoin. All the major YouTubers, Gareth Soloway, everybody, they're all telling you Bitcoin's going down to $3,000. Harvey Dent's out there telling you Bitcoin's going down to $100. Now Gareth Soloway, because we're dumping a little bit, he's talking about $15,000 again. I think people just need to realize when they're being manipulated and how nobody knows what the hell is going on in crypto. You know, the treasure map for crypto is Bitcoin halving, 4-year cycles, but that's too easy. Your big major YouTubers, your influencers, your guys like Gareth Soloway, they can't make money off that. They have to make money off selling you fear, and that's what they're going to do. Could Bitcoin go back down to $15,000? Sure, it's possible, but even if it did, we'd get a major, major pump right after, and it would be right back to $30,000 in a couple of days. So my advice, don't be trading this. Buy the dips. When it comes down to Hex, yes, Hex could go to zero, but I'm not selling any of my Hex. Could Richard Hart go to jail? That seems to be the consensus, especially if he was using investor money. But you can't put the nail in the coffin. I saw somebody in my comments the other day like, oh, Hex is dead. It's over. No, you can't say a coin is dead until we go into the bull market. Now, if Hex gets delisted and goes to zero, you can say it's dead, but it hasn't gone to zero. You cannot say whether your project was successful or not until the bull market. The bull market is not for another year. So a lot can happen in a year, folks. Hex can go down another 80% and it can go up another 1,000% in the next year. If we're in 2025 and Hex hasn't done anything and everything else has, then I'll come out and I'll say Hex was a failure and I wasted $300 on it or $400 on it or whatever I spent. But we're not even near that right now. Richard Hart's a flamboyant guy. Eventually he's going to start talking, and probably every day you're going to see Hex pumping up 80% one day, dumping 80% the next day. That's how these stinky pinky coins go. So other than that, like and subscribe. Talk to you later.